not this. The mic is pretty directional, so I think
Okay.
it'll be
That's,
all right. Yeah.
no, that's cool. Is it a Yeti? What kind of mic?
It's a no, it's an Apogee mic that plugs directly into your cell phone or computer or iPad or whatever. So,
Cool.
yeah, I use it a lot. We bought
Oh,
it
sure.
because it does have gain control. The gain control had gotten turned down.
Oh,
Um,
okay. No problem.
so, but it has, and my husband, we film him to sing a lot for auditions and stuff, and
I was going to ask. I didn't know what he did. That's cool.
he's like
He's a
a
musician.
Broadway singer. Yeah. So
Oh,
like
that's great.
but when we started traveling so much and having to tape him for auditions, we couldn't. He blows out the microphone. He's got a very large, manly voice, and so we found this years ago before anybody else was using them. We found our beautiful little Apogee mic.
That's excellent, man. Do you
Yeah.
mind if I keep that story in?
No, please do
Okay,
go
that's
for it.
great.
Yeah.
All right, well then
Yeah.
I will officially. This is what happens sometimes. I start a podcast before I officially welcome somebody. So I will say, Julianne Emery, welcome to Word Balloon. Long time coming, my friend. We got to meet years ago, and I'm so congratulations, man. Your trajectory has just been incredible and really well done.
Thank you. Lucky, very lucky. Work hard, but lucky. Yeah.
Well,
We met in a little New York kitchen, actually. And I know I think about that a lot right now. So I worry about all my pals in New York, but we had dinner, and my beautiful friend Susan cooked us a beautiful meal out of her little tiny New York kitchen.
absolutely. Our friend Susan Farrar. And I don't know if you remember this, Julie, but my friend Tony Felice is a great cartoonist. And do you remember those little cherub comic strips
Yes.
called Love Is?
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
had this poster, and it was a parody of the Love Is things, and it was Kirk carrying dead Spock in his arms. And literally, you answered the door, and your first words to me were like, "Oh my God, that's the saddest scene in Star Trek history." And I'm like, "Hi, I'm John. Who are you?" I'm
I
like, I have a
know. I
feeling we're going to
know.
be talking a lot tonight.
I was like, "Hi, I'm a nerd," and that makes me cry. And here we are. Yeah,
That was awesome. And back then, I remember you telling me that you had actually auditioned a lot for the Trek shows. Am I right?
I auditioned. Yeah, mostly for for Enterprise, the latest.
Okay.
I wasn't around in the TV world really before that, but
Okay.
I actually auditioned to play to Paul on Enterprise,
Wow.
and I know it would have been very different. Obviously I wasn't quite as bombshelly, but it was I was so torn about it at the time because I'm such a massive Trekkie that I was like, do I want to know how they make the ship shake when a laser? Yeah, I mean, do I really want to know this stuff? I mean, it's such a joy for me as a fan to watch. I was like, I'm not sure I want to know how the sausage gets made on this one.
I get it. No, absolutely. And
Yeah.
again, especially after probably spending 10 hours on a set and everything, it's like I always say, it's like working in a hardware store and then going home and diving into like a pile of nails. It's like, why would
Yeah.
you do that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I watch an enormous amount of TV, and right now I'm watching an enormous amount of television,
Sure.
partly because I enjoy it. Some stuff I really just flat out enjoy, but it does always turn into some sort of work brain for me at some point. I mean, I'm not saying there's not enjoyment, but like, my husband gets frustrated because sometimes I'm like, I wonder why they picked the two shot for that entire time. That's a really interesting choice. Like, even if I'm really into something, I'm like, they just jumped the line. Like, I can't fully turn it off for sure.
Well, I'm so, curious about you being in the midst of peak TV because you've worked with some incredible showrunners. And I mean,
Yeah.
going back to, was it The Riches, the Eddie Izzard FX show? Weren't you on that show?
I was, yeah. I had a recurring role on The Riches. I loved it. I played Gigi. So Eddie Izzard's boss on the show, a guy named Greg Henry, who's actually also a brilliant jazz pianist in real life.
Wow.
He played Eddie's boss, and he disappeared for an episode or two and came back married to a stripper from Vegas, and I was the stripper from Vegas. Yeah. Yeah, that was such a great show. That show got killed kind of by the writer's strike.
Sure.
When that happened, we were sort of were we mid season two, or we just wrapped season two, but we were supposed to come back, and it killed a lot of shows. But it was such a the creator of that show was a playwright, like our friend Susan Ferrara, and so every character was fully developed and interesting and wonderful. I really loved that show.
That's
Margot
cool.
Martindale was also on that show. Speaking of people who like blown up, yeah.
Yes, indeed. No, she's incredible. Great character actor. And I do want to talk because you were in Susan's play, right, down in Alabama Shakes, right?
I didn't do it at Alabama Shakes. I did our friend Carrie directed, and Elizabeth West played Buzz down at
Okay,
Alabama Shakespeare. Yeah, yeah, it was a beautiful. I went down to see it. I was shooting Bosch, so
sure.
I couldn't go. So I couldn't go away and do it. But we did take a weekend. My husband and I, we went all the way to Alabama to see it, and it was so magical and beautiful. If you're a theater person out there, if you're a theater artistic director, owner, whatever, you want to book Buzz. It's magical.
It's an amazing play. No, and I
It's
was,
so beautiful.
she involved me very, very early, when she was just getting started writing it and everything, checking it out. And I'm thrilled for Susan and Zach too. I think they're a great couple, and they're very sweet people. And I'm glad, hey man, we're all on the creative journey, and I'm
Yeah,
really
and
happy that we're all doing good.
I think you if you're a creative and you do that for your life, I think you create your own village, right? And I'm thrilled that to have them as part of our creative village. I mean, I've been involved with Buzz one way or another for 6 or 7 years, so I'm thrilled to see it making its way. Susan has another play that I just directed a stage reading of called The Fall, which is a little bit of a twist on the romantic comedy, and it's completely different than Buzz and delightful and wonderful and just as rich. And I'm thrilled to sort of see where she's going with that.
That's excellent. No,
Yeah.
I haven't had her on the podcast yet. I'm gonna have to rectify that. And it's no, I'm thrilled. I mean, we worked together in radio, in Chicago radio, years ago before she went to New York. So old friend, absolutely.
Good
Well,
egg.
yeah. And now you mentioned Bosch, and that's coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm glad that production was able to finish, and we are able to and see it. And I felt that, and especially as a streaming vet as you are, it seems like Netflix and Amazon are the best positioned of the platforms to still have content that's in the can and ready to
Yeah,
release during this period.
Hulu is also pretty well positioned that way. Like I
Sure.
did Catch 22 for
Yes,
Hulu.
yes. We'll talk about that.
And
Absolutely.
that's another example of some, Hulu, Amazon, Netflix, they all work under this model where you kind of get everything in the can shot, um, and then you go into into post production, and then you put it all up at once. So like we finished Bosch just before the holidays.
Oh, great.
So yeah, and a lot of the streamers do that. So there's a little more lag time. If you do a traditional model, then you're still shooting while the show's airing. And actually Preacher for AMC, a lot of cable is starting to do that too. We always finish Preacher completely almost right before the show starts airing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering about that in terms of the difference, and wondered if Basic had the same. I mean, it's obviously Basic was first, but that same kind of streaming model of having it shot and then releasing it, or were they doing that old-fashioned network? We're making it while the season goes.
Well, I think some shows are still shooting, are just finishing up shooting when the season starts airing on cable, but most often on cable, it's mostly because of the shortened season.
Sure.
So on cable or streaming, you're doing probably 10 to 13 episodes a season, and on network, you're generally doing 22.
Right.
So there's not a time to get all 22 shot and then start airing them. It's just you'd never make it to the fall again. You'd never make it to your premiere again. So I think that shortened model is helpful that way. I think the shortened model actually, if you're not a procedural, I think that shortened model is helpful for storytelling too. I think packing it into that many episodes is artistically helpful.
I completely agree, and it surprised me that more of the over-the-air networks haven't gone to that 13-week model.
Yeah, so there are some things starting to. Evil, my friend Michael is on Evil for CBS, and they
Cool.
did a 13 episode season, and they're picked up for another 13 episode season. So I think the traditional model is on network television is starting to shift. I think we're only going to see that more and more. And actually, right now, while we're all locked down, it's something called pilot season when
Yes.
they shoot the first episode of all the potential new shows for network television for the big four networks. And that kind of got obliterated this year. And I feel like it's going to kick in a new version of network TV for us after this is all over. It's going to kick in a different model for them. They've been hanging on to the old model for a long time. I think it might even help them.
I agree, and I also, yeah, if there wasn't such misery in this status quo, I mean, as a broadcast nerd, as much as a geek nerd, I am fascinated by the changes in. I mean, radio's experiencing it as well. I mean, it's all over the place with
Yeah.
a
I mean,
different business.
Well, I mean, some of it is the customer is always right. Like your customer is going to go get your content wherever is convenient for them.
Sure.
And we like to binge. I'm a binger. I mean, I was a binger when I was going to Blockbuster and getting the DVDs for Battlestar Galactica. I
Atta
didn't want to
girl.
wait. Like I've been a binger forever. So I think, I think I think the business is trying to shift to its audience a little better. The film business is lagging still. They still can't quite figure out how to maintain it, how to do it. I mean, right now, you're either a little indie film or you're a $300 million studio film. There is no more $30 million, $40 million movie at the studio level. There used to be like romantic comedies when I did Hitch. I think
Yes.
we were a $70 million budget when I did Hitch, and that doesn't exist anymore, really, not on a studio level. So I feel like I hope that features will start to shift a little bit as well as they start to find their way between online streaming and people actually sitting down in the movie theater.
I hear you, and really, again, the theater is kind of left to the spectacle and the kids' animated movies. And I've had this conversation as well with movie critics and other media watchers. And like you said, that mid-level budget film exists now on streaming because as much as there
Right.
are TV shows, they are making movies for Hulu, Netflix, and Amazon. So
Right. And when you're only making a spectacle movie, you're only talking to one kind of audience. You're
absolutely,
not talking to a broader audience. And our at home viewing experience has only gotten better and better. I mean, my living room is on the other side of that wall right there, and I've got a projector hooked up, right?
atta girl.
So I got a projector, I got my Xbox hooked up to it. I stream everything through. I got my Apple TV, I stream everything. It's big, it's beautiful, got a nice little sound bar, I've got good sound,
Atta girl.
and I don't have to deal with somebody talking in my movie. So I like to still go to the movie theater,
Yeah.
but as we continue this shift in how the customer wants to view things, I think the business has to continue to shift that way. I think it'll be interesting. Right now, film studios still only really value the in theater experience. The other experiences for their films are after the fact, and they're not necessarily as valued monetarily, whether they turn
Yes.
in that kind of money or not.
Right.
And some films I see more residual money on the back end after, on the post and on the post movie world, on the post
Yes.
movie theater world. So they must be making more money on that end, but it's still not valued quite as heavily. So I think it'll be interesting. I think that's going to shift, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that happens. Netflix is spending big money on some movies at this
Yes.
point. Amazon is as well.
Yes.
Amazon's doing like some indie films, but in a bigger budget kind of way, but they still feel like The Report and Marriage Story. Is that
Yeah.
on
Marriage Story.
Netflix or Amazon? Yeah. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah. It was
I think it'll
Netflix. Yeah.
be yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how that model continues to change. And I think this moment is going to change it a lot.
I completely agree. No, and again, I really appreciate your point of view being in the belly of the beast, as it were. So, talk about Bosch. You got, it's coming up in a couple weeks, and you're like, I mean, I don't even know how they credit you as like, is it like the season long guest star? Is that a fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I have at what would be a gigantic, heavily recurring role, I guess. I am a season long gal. So I was hired for season 6.
Mhm.
And I play an FBI agent. Bosch traditionally really butts heads with the FBI.
Sure.
I think my Agent Sylvia Reese, my character, eventually finds a way to kind of bridge that gap, and we work together to save LA from catastrophe. But not a pandemic catastrophe.
Thankfully, yes.
So it's a very exciting season. It's a pretty heavy action season, actually. I feel like they took all the dials on Bosch and turned them up a little this season, which is
Interesting.
is nice. I have an amazing character. I don't want to spoiler it because it's going to all come out at once, and people like to binge it, and I don't want to give anything major away,
Sure.
but I have a great storyline, and I work heavily with Bosch, with Titus Welliver and Jamie
Yeah, Titus.
Hector, which was really fun. Yeah.
He's
My
incredible.
character kind of teams up with them for the season, which is great.
Yeah, that's well, and certainly that's what it looked like from the trailer.
Yeah.
So no, I'm very excited. Titus is incredible. Loved him on Lost. That's the first time I took notice of him, and everything he's done since, and really enjoy Bosch. So that's a great opportunity, and looking forward to it. Well, let's talk about something that is in the can or already done, and it's been out for a while, and that's Catch 22. First of all, pretty ambitious to adapt
Yeah.
Catch 22. I love the original film, and
It's
I mean,
well,
so I've
and
never
this
read the
is
book, but
yeah, it's interesting how people feel about Catch 22 because people who love the book are tend to be purists for the book, and people who love the movie tend to be purists for the movie. Like they don't, and those two worlds don't necessarily meet. I would say that it's a 6-part miniseries on Hulu. George Clooney, Hugh Laurie, Kyle Chandler, Chris Abbott. My character,
yeah.
I'm married to George Clooney and having a mad, passionate affair with Chris Abbott. We shot in Italy in the summer. I mean, I was surrounded by gorgeous, talented men, and it was such a lovely job. It was such a great gig. But on the flip side, on the artistic side, the the miniseries, just because there's more time, I think is a little truer to the book than the
Agreed.
movie. The movie leaves out a lot of characters, and it doesn't explore a lot of the characters, like the guys in Chris Abbott's unit, Usarian's unit, don't
Yes.
really sort of get a full due, I think, and they do
Right.
more so in the miniseries. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and again, 2 hour movie versus 6 hours miniseries. So no, I get that. No, and I am I'm a big fan of the old movie, but again, no, I really did it. I thought it was great, and it was its own animal.
Yeah, it's its own thing for sure, and it's so beautifully shot.
Absolutely.
And our direct George Clooney and his producing partner Grant Heslov directed 4 of the 6 episodes.
Wow.
And it's just really it's just, and Ellen Kuros directed the other 2, and Ellen is kind of a famous female DP who's turned director. And so,
Terrific.
and her episodes in particularly are so visually stunning that it's really, and because we went to Italy and we didn't sit down in one place, we were in Sardinia for a month, we were in Rome for a couple months, and then there were these little tiny villages outside of Rome, and it was it's really something to see. If you even just visually, it's worth watching the visual spectacle of it. It's really nice.
That's excellent. How long? I mean, and obviously that was 6 episodes as opposed to 10 or 12 on a different streaming show or a basic cable show. How long does it take to shoot, some of these things that you've done in the past?
So it depends on the budget, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
your budget determines how many days you get per episode. Now, in the case of Catch 22, it's a really unusual case. They cross-boarded all 6 episodes. And if you don't know, if your audience doesn't know what cross-boarding is, the board is what we call the schedule. So before you start shooting an episode of television, your assistant director sets at your AD staff, sends out a board, and it's everything that's going to shoot on every single day and the order it's going to shoot in. And, and that's why if you don't make your day, you're in trouble because you punted a scene that you don't know how you're going to fit in. So to cross board 6 episodes is almost insane. People kind of thought they were nuts, but they built the airbase in Sardinia. I mean, you could
Wow.
walk around it, and the planes were there. And like my
Wow.
first day on set, I drove by actual World War II planes that are still flying, and the barracks were also, they just built all the little tents and the barracks and everything. So it's so we shot 6 episodes of stuff there, and then we shot some stuff at Cinematique, and then so they cross-boarded it per location. And
Okay.
our 3 directors, Ellen and George and Grant, were all on set all the time. So sometimes it happened to me too. You would shoot one scene with one director, and then you'd skip to an episode of a different you'd skip to a scene from a different episode, and you'd be working with a different director. So all 3 directors were on set all day, and somehow they didn't kill each other. Like somehow they got along beautifully and they collaborated beautifully, and they just handed the baton off. And in the case of George and Grant, they're both also in the show. So Grant
Yeah.
plays the doctor,
Okay.
and then George plays Shaiskov.
Yep. Yep.
And so watching them switch hats and hand the baton to each other so beautifully it was really impressive. And as someone who is a hyphenate myself, I loved watching how they managed that. I feel like I learned a lot there.
That's cool. So what is the other part of the hyphen beyond actress then? I'm assuming that's what you mean as a hyphenate, like
Yeah,
writer,
it is.
director,
Yeah,
and
so I'm an actor. I
yeah.
also direct, and I directed Susan's one woman show. My husband and I co-directed The Wonder
Oh
that won
yes,
the
okay.
United Solo Festival. Yeah, it's so beautifully done on her part. And I also write. I'm pitching a TV show around town now. So the way Susan Ferrara and I met was through my friend Sean. I was looking for an additional cast member for my digital series back in 2009, 2010. And I wanted someone to play his wife. And he said, you have to meet my friend Susan. I think she's perfect for this. So that's how we met.
Was that the
And
couples therapy
yes,
digital show?
yeah,
Yeah,
that
what
was
was the
my
name of
show.
that?
Then we got help.
Okay, and is it playing anywhere? Is it
Yeah,
posted
it's
anywhere?
still up online. It's still up on YouTube. We still have our website up. It's still, people still stumble onto it and find
That's
it.
great.
It was,
Yeah.
we shot it in a moment on the internet when it was still the Wild West.
Yes.
In terms of putting content up, we
Sure.
broke a lot of rules. Everybody thought you couldn't do anything more than 5 minutes. Our episodes are 10 to 13 minutes.
Okay.
They're 10
Oh,
minutes in the
interesting.
first season because that's the longest YouTube video you could upload.
Absolutely. Yes,
YouTube wouldn't
indeed.
hold anything else. And then the second season, their time limit got longer, so our timing got a little longer as well.
Cool.
But I'm proud of it. It was kind of film school for me. So I think season 2 is much improved. I learned a lot, and I wrote something we could shoot in my living room in New York with my brilliant actor friends. So it's very character development heavy, and I got a beautiful cast. I got just a really brilliant cast of actors. Sam McMurray comes in, plays Susan's dad.
Yes,
We
indeed.
had like Tony winners and tons of Broadway actors. I mean, the biggest challenge for that show was coordinating people's schedules and actually getting them in the same room together at the same time.
That's amazing. And honestly, now is it Quibi, the new 10-minute?
Yeah, I thought of that. I was just talking to someone about Quibi, a development executive I know about
Sure.
Quibi the other day. Yeah, it's Quibi is the new, they're all like, oh, how will Quibi do these shortened episodes? And I'm like, honey, like independent producers, we've been doing this for a long time. Independent content creators been telling these stories this way for a while.
You're
So,
totally
but
right.
our episodes still had a beginning, middle, and end. I mean, some web series at that time would just start putting up scenes, and then
Yes.
you would kind of piece together in a full season. I came from the traditional TV world at that point, so I wanted each episode to kind of have a beginning, middle, and end. And I wanted it, and we uploaded once a week, and that was mostly to save me because I did all the jobs that we couldn't afford to hire out.
All the
So I was
post.
editing and
Yeah.
and we were
Wow.
promoting and yeah. It
What'd
was a
you
great
know?
experience. So I had brilliant actors. I got so lucky.
That's awesome. What'd you use in terms of your editing and that stuff? I mean, because I mean, a lot of people who listen to my show and watch my show certainly are aspiring
Right.
filmmakers as
Okay,
well as
so
comic people.
you could never do this now. So because it was the Wild West then. So we had zero amounts of money, and I mean zero. And so we shot it on $150 camcorders from Best Buy.
Outstanding.
They were little cannons, and then I decided every problem we had, we tried to solve creatively. So I was like, well, then it's home video style. Then my character will be filming it for posterity to prove that this can work. So we actually show the camera in the opening credits, and we show my character running the camera.
Okay.
So, and then I did run the camera I did everything. And then I did run the camera in the series, along with some cameras on sticks in two shots. So I'd shoot two shots. I'd shoot two couples at once, and two shot on each of them, and then I had the moving camera, which was supposed to be my character's POV anyway, so it kind of worked for us. We shot 3 episodes a day, which was sometimes close to 45 pages.
Damn.
We would block shoot 3 episodes facing one direction. So if we had 4 couples, we'd shoot 2 of our couples all the way through the 3 episodes, because it was faster for them to change clothes than my 2-3 person crew to reset. And then we turn everything around, and then we'd go and shoot whatever scenes had actual blocking, like if people were walking around or moving around and things.
Yeah.
So, and then I started editing it originally in iMovie, which I should have known would never actually work. iMovie now functions a little better, but I kept crashing iMovie because it didn't like the size of the file. So I overloaded iMovie. So we buckled down and bought Final Cut on our credit cards. I
Sure.
mean, um, and I learned Final Cut. I took video tutorials, and at that point, you could also go to the Mac store and take a Final Cut tutorial if you signed up.
Okay. Yeah.
And the basic tutorial wasn't enough for me, but they'd sit and talk to me after long enough so that I could pull some things up and show them. I mean, it was kind of by hook or by crook. And whenever I got to a point in Final Cut where I was like, oh, I need to adjust the color, I need to do a little colorization here, I would just go take another online video tutorial. I mean, the beauty of our online world is that you can do that. And I learned a little sound editing that way. I mean, we just sort of figured it out. And there's a lot to be said for that as a creative. Like if you are tenacious enough, and you're curious enough, you can probably figure most things out with the tools we have now online, So it was, yeah. And then we uploaded to YouTube, and then we moved over to some other platforms that don't exist anymore and put up our own website. So we had to figure out how to build a website.
Sure.
And then we were trying to figure out how to optimize our search engine. I mean, we were doing things before anybody else was doing them. The online digital content world, the little rogue players in the early 2000s were absolutely on the forefront of everything the internet is doing today. I sat at that point, I had done a series for ABC, and then I had a lull in my career, and I was doing, I did a short-lived series, and I had a lull in my career, and I was doing the web series. And an ABC executive took me out to lunch between seasons of Then We Got Help, because ABC did not understand why Hulu had just started. So they did not understand the deal with Hulu and why they were putting all their shows up on Hulu and how that worked and how do you get people to watch, but people won't watch long things online. And I'm like, well, you should have your own website. You should have things on your website, but your website is crap. Nobody wants to watch it on your website because your website crashes at like minute 33. I have zero amounts of money at that point. We're financially struggling, and I'm at some fancy restaurant in New York with an ABC executive going, I don't really understand this internet thing. And I'm like, but you need to. This is where this is all going. People will watch online. This is where it's happening. This is the direction it's moving. It was a really interesting time period.
Julie, I'm 15 years into my podcast, and I had the same conversations with radio broadcast executives.
Yeah.
They didn't get the internet. And then, frankly, in some cases, they still don't get the internet when it comes to radio. They're getting better. But it's amazing.
Well, radio, I mean, podcasts are radio. Like there's, there are all these billboards in LA right now with fictional podcasts, like full casts, and this new story we wrote. And I'm like, y'all, that's a radio play. Like y'all did not invent something. That is a radio play that I get to go listen to whenever I want. But it's like, oh, it's this new thing. And I'm like, it's really not. It's just changing the platform. It's not even changing your audience. It's changing where your audience wants to find you.
Do you listen to You Must Remember This, the old Hollywood Katrina Longworth podcast at all?
Yeah, I have. I haven't caught up with it in a while. Yeah.
As a broadcaster, I am, and also from the attitude of doing it yourself, that is something that intrigues me, is to get into narration storytelling. And I've got a couple ideas that I would like to pursue. And certainly during the lockdown, I might have a little more time to pursue those things.
Yeah, you should. You really should. I mean, it's a great look. It's also the same thing as books on tape, audiobooks.
Sure.
My husband and I do a lot of road trips, and we love to pop in a great audiobook.
Sure.
But we listen to a lot of Star Wars audiobooks.
Awesome.
Partially because we're nerds. And yes, for those paying attention, I'm a Trekkie and a Star Wars fan at the same time. Don't let your head split open. It's okay. It's possible. It happens.
Absolutely.
And but here's the thing about the Star Wars audiobooks is that they come with the John Williams music. They come with all the sound effects. So when you're and sure, the lightsaber sound effects and the phaser sound effects, but also when you're on a ship, you'll hear like low level in the background. Like it's some of them are read by one person, but some of them have full casts.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like listening to a movie. It's
100%.
really wonderful. But that's also the same thing as doing It's a radio play,
It's
right?
still time radio,
It's a radio
absolutely.
play. Sure.
Have you listened to like old radio, like Lux Radio Theater, where they've done radio
Yeah.
adaptations of
My
films?
my stepdad had us listening to radio plays when I was a kid. He'd give us the little cassettes, and he
Sure.
had us listening to radio plays when I was a kid. Yeah.
That's excellent. A dear
Yeah.
friend of mine who's a big voiceover actor, Susan Eisenberg. She's Wonder Woman in the Justice League
Awesome.
from the TV show. I know.
Yeah.
I know. She's a
Awesome.
doll. And she's been doing they revived Suspense, the old radio anthology mystery show. And
Wow.
she's been in the cast of a lot of new ones. And obviously, they don't kid themselves. They know they're bringing back old radio. But I love it because being such a radio drama fan, growing up the same way that you did with your stepfather and everything. Yeah, I mean, I've constantly loved that stuff. And it's like, oh man, I was born too late. I would have like loved being a radio
No,
actor.
but you're not. Look, you are now. Like, and they also, you know, the cool thing about radio plays was the Foley, but the Foley is the same as sound design now. We just have more at our fingertips. Like, you
Absolutely.
can sound design the crap out of it. It's really cool. I mean, we're in a cool moment that way. We're in a cool moment for content creators, for sure.
100%, absolutely. And again, like you said, you know, in your case, you were saying about building your own community of like-minded creatives, but also you were making your own opportunities with that show. I mean, I really think that's great.
I was, and I was also, look, women in the business,
Tell me.
you have a harder time age transitioning than men. Like,
Sure, yes.
and I think that's changing and getting better for us now.
Good.
But I had a moment in my 30s where I was like, wow, the business doesn't want me right now. Like, I had 3 years where I worked a little, but I was struggling, and I wasn't the 28-year-old cop anymore, or I wasn't the 25-year-old girlfriend. There just weren't a lot for grown-up women at that moment.
Yep.
And I think that's getting better, but it did turn me into something else. I mean, it did make me sit down and go, wow, I wonder if I can write something. Well, what would I write? Well, I have this idea. I should write it. And then I wrote the first episode of Then We Got Help. And my husband read it, who was my, producer, my and he's also in the show. But he said, well, why would we, he was like, this is amazing. We should shoot this. And I was like, why would we shoot one? Like, if we're going to shoot it, we should shoot it. Like, it's just going to be up to us. There's no network greenlighting it or giving us money. If we're going to shoot it, we should. So then I wrote a full season. I reached out, put on my big boy pants and reached out to some writer friends in the industry who had a lot of an Emmy-winning writer friend who had a lot of TV experience as a showrunner. And he's like, here's how you lay out a season. Here's how you do a Bible. Here's what you should pay attention to. Here's what you shouldn't, because you've already got a better way to develop characters than most writers do. So that was such a gift. And then every step along the way, I mean, I sent the first cut of the first episode off to like an editor friend who is kind of fancy, and then I went and had a drink at 11 o'clock in the morning. I was like, and I don't even drink that much, but, and director friends to get notes, and that was it. I did kind of create a film school for myself, and it is possible to do that, but it takes guts, man. I mean, and my actors were working for free. My crew would just show up and I'd teach them their job for the day. They were all working for my mama's cooking. She would come up and cook all day whenever we had a shoot day.
Fantastic.
And they were all working and it was great food, but they were all working for the food,
Hilarious. Yeah.
But it's a worthy endeavor, and it did turn me into a different kind of artist. It really did. I'm grateful for that.
Well, and again, it's this empowerment of the technology now, and that we can do it ourselves. Honestly, Julie, you'll forgive me, but I know you feel this way as well. I feel like you, me, Susan, other friends, cartoonist friends of mine, we're all on the same path, man. We're all creating this stuff and doing it ourselves. And that's why I've talked about losing the radio gig on the podcast already. And like I told you in my emails, I'm like, something, I think it's going to work out because I really believe in what I'm doing online. So,
Yeah, well, I believe in what you're doing online too.
Thanks, buddy.
And I would like to tell everybody where your site is, where we can go.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Yeah, well, wordballoon.com, certainly that's where the shows are, and on YouTube, on my Word Balloon channel on YouTube, but patreon.com/wordballoon if you want to subscribe. I know everyone's kind of hurting right now financially, so if you can't afford it, that's okay. I'm happy to be here and grow the audience, but if you can and you want to subscribe, patreon.com/wordballoon. But I want to get back.
We're in a double-edged moment that way, right? Like we're all trying to maybe conserve financially, but we're also all desperate for things to do all day.
Sure.
So if you can toss a little money in to make that happen, that's how that happens. That's
I
how we keep each
appreciate
other
that.
going. Yeah.
That was very nice to break for the commercial. I thank you for that. I wanted do we have, do I don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to ask about Preacher. Obviously, were you a reader of Preacher? Did you read comics? I haven't asked you yet.
Yeah, so there was I'm from a very small town in the South, and I was definitely a sci-fi fantasy fan. And my stepdad would take us to, bookstores in the city, and I was a massive book reader and
Cool.
massive reader of fantasy, sci-fi fiction, any of it. And but there was no comic book shop in my hometown.
Okay.
Like I feel like I missed my moment with comics. It just wasn't available to me.
Hmm.
The local library was available to me, but there was nowhere for me to get that stuff. So I came to comics as an adult, and I had not read the Preacher comics. I mean, once I joined the show, I did.
Sure.
Yeah, Malcolm Barrett and I on our way there for our first episode, we're both reading them together on the plane. Um, but it's the the Preacher comics are very sophisticated.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to steer people the wrong way. They're still wrong and gory and funny and twisted and dark. And you're going to see some boobies. So, if you're going to give the niece or nephew that thing, make sure they're the right age for it.
You're right.
But I find them really fascinating. Garth Ennis grew up in Ireland in a time when there was a bombing down the street, and on the way to, and it would come on the radio, and on the way to school you had to avoid it. And I see a lot of that time period in Ireland in Preacher, particularly in the Grail, the organization my character works for.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see that influence all over it. And that's so sophisticated to me that's the conversation that he and Steve Dillon were trying to have with the comics. I just think that's so ambitious and amazing, and they were having to really have a conversation about the battle for humanity's soul and what humanity values or doesn't, and an honest conversation about it, not a glossed over one, like a messy, dirty, honest conversation about it, which I think is really, I don't know, it's insanely admirable.
I'm with you. Absolutely. Did you have a chance to meet Garth and talk to him at all about it?
Yeah, Steve passed right before we started season
Yes.
2, so I did not meet Steve, and I'm heartbroken I didn't. And we had on our walls, particularly season 2, season 3, one of the sound stages, an entire wall was dedicated to Steve Dillon art.
Wow. Great.
And then we had people sending us Steve Dillon fan art.
Oh, that's great.
With homages to Steve Dillon. So he very much, even though he was gone, he very much permeated what we were doing. And I did meet Garth. Garth was around, and he's such a mild-mannered guy. It's so weird. He's so nice. And like, you would never be like, that dude wrote Preacher. Like, he looks like, I don't know, the accountant from a kid's softball, I mean, like soccer team or something. It's like some kid's dad that's an accountant or an insurance salesman. He's a very interesting guy.
That's excellent. No, and
Yeah.
really, I know you've done your share of Comic Cons and Comic Con panels and stuff. Now, as a nerd fan and everything, yeah, what was that like, making the transition and being up there on the podium and everything?
Yeah. So here's the thing about Preacher. I am a fangirl and a little geek girl. Season 2, when we went to Comic-Con, Malcolm Barrett and Pip Torrens and I, the Grail was a surprise addition to the panel. So we weren't supposed to, we were supposed to hide in the hotel until, but they gave me this lanyard that got me in everywhere. And like, I just couldn't. So my husband and I put on a baseball cap, and my husband and I, left the hotel to go to the floor, and I was like, if we can just get out of the hotel without seeing anybody from AMC, we'll be free and clear. Like, we were like sneaking around the outside of the hotel. Like, we wound up going down the alley where the maintenance people come in and out, and like, yeah. So I did go to the floor and geek out, and then Malcolm and I went back after our panel together and did like a live stream for AMC. But
oh, nice.
yeah, but one of the things I saw the day before our panel was when we were coming home was the people lined up sleeping in line to get into Hall H.
Yep.
And we didn't just have a panel at Comic-Con, we were in Hall H. And that's like 6,000 people.
That's right.
That's 6,000 people. And we were in between, I think Game of Thrones and the Marvel show where they all got to get, not just Defenders. So we were in between Game of Thrones and Defenders. And I was like, nobody's going to stay for us. It's going to empty out. And then it's going to, well, I mean, look, Preacher's a niche show, right? If you're a Preacher fan, you're special.
Sure.
Like not everybody understands or can appreciate what Preacher is, right?
Absolutely. Very, very different show. Yeah.
I mean, it was full, and we knew people who were still waiting in line trying to get in during our panel. Like Dominic was trying to get somebody in. Oh, so-and-so's in line. I got somebody in. I was like, can we get them a backstage pass? Do we have any more seats ourselves? Like it was walking on that stage was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. And I started my career as a stage actor. It's not like I hadn't been on big stages, it just was really intense. And to be in a room full of people who are as passionate about your show as you are there's no experience like that. Like, these are not casual viewers. If you wait to get into Hall H, you are not a casual viewer. And the level, so you do the panel. Seth Rogen is always with us, so he kind of runs our panel. Yeah. I mean, there's someone running the panel, but really it's Seth, right? I mean, it's So so you do your sort of panel section of it, and they show footage, and everyone's so excited, and they show this huge long trailer, and then there's a Q&A section at Hall H. Yeah. And the level of that conversation is higher and better than most interviews I do. I mean, it was really something. I mean, the flip side of that is San Diego Comic-Con, unlike other Comic-Cons, it's not like you go to your panel and then you go have fun. Like, it's like 2 full days of press. They run you as hard as you can. They don't give you a lunch break. They just try to keep you fed, and you run as fast as you can go from thing to thing to thing to thing. So there's an exhaustion level there as an actor, because you also have to make it work all day, right? For whoever you're in the room with. Like, I don't want anybody to have a bad interview, so we're just trying to make it work for them all day. Sure. And it takes you a week to recover from Comic-Con. I feel like it takes me a few days to recover from a con if I just go as a fan. Even it's just a lot of stimuli, totally. And a lot of people and a lot of energy. But it takes a lot to get through it. And you want to honor that. You want to honor the fans that care enough to show up to something like that.
That's reassuring, because you are younger than me, and it is reassuring that it takes time to recover. And also, again, the amount of pressure that you're on. I was just somebody that was on the other side of those press junkets trying to get my 2 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever they gave. And it's a buzzsaw. You're absolutely right about that. Now, tell me about Rogen, because he is the last guy. I'm so thrilled that he loves this stuff and wants to make things like Preacher. And that's terrific.
Oh, but no, he's a fanboy. He's a grown-up fanboy. Yeah. Like, he grew up reading the Preacher comics. He grew up reading The Boys. I mean, all the stuff that's on, he and Evan, all the stuff that's on their development plate are stuff that they were like 12-year-old fans of, right? So there's a dedication to getting it right from them that is different than another producer or production company buying an IP and making a show. Like, there's a real dedication to it. I mean, and then Seth always showed up to San Diego Comic-Con for us every year. And our final season, we went up right after the Game of Thrones panel, which happened after the Game of Thrones finale, by the way, and everybody was so mad.
Yeah.
And the showrunners for Game of Thrones did not show up to the panel, even though they were supposed to be there. That's right. And the first question we got once the audience started asking questions was, do you feel, because it's our final season, and they're like, how do you feel about the finale? How do you feel like you went out? And Seth leans into the microphone and he goes, well, I'm here right now. So that should tell you something. I'm very proud of what we did. I'm sure it won't satisfy everyone, but we're happy with what we did. And I am standing up here to stand behind it and to tell you that I stand behind it. Like, it was just, and then he took some pot shots at the Game of Thrones creators, rightly so. I mean, and then he they kind of threw their actors under the bus, like by not showing up. They kind of did, it's probably not the best thing to do, but Seth really was passionate about our show, and he did a lot of publicity for the show every season. And he and Evan are always there for us. Evan Goldberg is his producing partner.
Yes, absolutely.
And they're passionate fanboys. I mean, it's like Preacher. Charlie Collier was the president of AMC when we were doing Preacher. Mm-hmm. He's not there now, but he and Seth and Evan were kind of the same about the show. So that first year at Comic-Con, they show your extended trailer before you walk out on stage, right? And I was standing beside Charlie Collier backstage watching the trailer. It's the first time many of us have seen it too. And I'm watching it, and Charlie keeps giggling, and he's a big guy, like, I don't know, 6'2" or something. He's a really tall, big guy. He's like, I love this show. And I was like, oh my God, you're 12. But that's Seth and Evan too. I mean, the fact that we should never have existed on a network like AMC, on an ad-supported network. We ran off advertisers all the time, but Charlie just loved the show so much he didn't care. Wow. I mean, he was like, oh, they'll be back. I mean, we just bled advertisers. But Charlie was like, I'll work it out. He just loved the show that much. And it was like he was getting away with something, like he was 12 and getting away with something. And that says a lot, because Preacher really opened the door for American Gods, for The Boys would not exist right now. I mean, there's a lot that's come on the air in the last 2 or 3 years that owes its existence to Preacher. And everybody said it couldn't be done. And then Preacher did it. And Preacher did it on an ad-dependent network, it's a big deal.
Yeah, you need that kind of CEO that's willing to put, the dice on the table and just go, hey, no, we're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, look, the creatives matter, sure, but you have to have, if you're operating on a high level like that, you have to have a champion in the head office, right? You have to have someone willing to stick their neck out, and you have to have somebody who also understands what you're doing, and that should not be minimized. I mean, that takes a lot, especially for a show like Preacher. It takes a lot.
And I think we're seeing that now. And again, both perspectives, as an actor in the belly and also as a fangirl. I mean, you see the vitriol online right now on some things as they wind up. Star Wars, certainly. Star Trek.
I have no room for the Star Wars hate or the vitriol from fans. I'm like, just because it didn't play out I'm delighted that it surprised me. Like, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I'm going to tell you something. I listened to all the audiobooks, and those audiobooks are about the post-Star Wars world, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
they're about Han and Leia, and that is not the same story they told in the movies.
Sure.
That is not the same in any way, shape, or form. Is it the same story? And I'm like, and I'm okay with it. I'm like, surprise me. I'm delighted by it. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Okay, I think we've gotten into a place online where people like to feel super smart and convince others they're super smart. And then when something doesn't play out the way they predicted, or the way that they definitely espoused and said was going to happen because they're so smart, then suddenly it's hateful and it can't possibly be good. And I say to you that even Star Wars is art, and art is supposed to surprise. And it's supposed to surprise you. It's supposed to challenge you. It's supposed to make you think differently than you did when you walked in the theater. For me, the final 3 did all of that. So I don't. Okay. Yeah. So I don't. I mean, look. I'm not saying anything's perfect, but I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect movie.
Definitely not. No.
But the original trilogy that I am definitely devoted to, and everyone are not perfect.
Oh no, and it really, and Jedi in particular is really, and especially coming after Empire, is kind of a letdown. I love
Jedi, but still, it's all of it. There are flaws there. It's just it's just that we want to idealize it now. So that's fair. You can only make a movie. You can't live up to I don't know, 20 million fans ideal of what that movie should be. That's
Right.
you can nobody can do that. It's A, it's not possible, but also B, that would be really bad art. Like
Oh, I agree with that.
a fan service movie, just something that's full fan service that is everything the fans want and expect. Sure, you can have fan service moments, but making that full movie is not going to go well for you. It's just
I
not going to
agree
be
with that.
good. Yeah.
I was thinking too, though, in terms of, as you said about the guy who used to run AMC, that you had an executive that kind of understood. And what concerns me about Star Wars and Star Trek right now is that there might be kind of sometimes an imbalance between the fan service and the story they're trying to tell, and also the idea, how important merchandising is, especially in something like Star Wars.
Yeah, so I get that because Disney owns Star Wars now.
Yeah,
I get that concern, and I think that's a very real concern. I will say I liked The Mandalorian quite a lot.
me too.
And I do think that that was the first Star Wars entity that Disney really took full control of. Like they tried to let the final trilogy, they tried to let the Lucas people kind of, still have their handle on it and everything. But I think Mandalorian was the first like full Disney, this is us, and I liked it very much. So maybe there's a world of Disney that will service Star Wars in a good way. I don't know. We'll have to continue to watch and keep seeing. But but based on The Mandalorian, I'm willing to give it a shot.
Well,
And
also
see what happens.
you had a strong showrunner in Favreau with
Sure,
Mandalorian.
but Disney went and hired him, didn't they?
They
So
did.
you have to say that. Like you can say,
Yeah.
oh, they had this great showrunner. Look, our showrunner for Preacher came right out of the Breaking Bad writers' room. So you've got Seth and Evan and their wrong and twisted sense of humor, and then you've got the character development and dark drama of the Breaking Bad world, all working together on Preacher. I would never have guessed that Seth and Evan would have advocated for someone from Breaking Bad to show run
Showrun.
Preacher, but they did, and it worked for the show. So you also have to say Disney hired Favreau, or
Yes.
Favreau went in and pitched, and they said, yes, we would like to do that. And then they let Favreau never walked, he never got fired, he never, so they let him. I'm sure they pushed back on some things, but ultimately Favreau did what he wanted to do with it. So, I don't know. We'll see. I think I have some hope for it
Yeah, I
because
agree.
of The Mandalorian. And I think it's smart of them rather than try to keep the original arc of the movies, let the 9 movies end
Yes.
completely.
Time
I
for
think
new
it's smart
stories.
of them to explore other areas. I think
Agreed.
that's super smart. I think that is beneficial. And honestly, it's not a move I would have thought Disney would have made. I would have thought they would have kept those original movies going for as long as they could possibly keep them going. But they didn't. So, and then was Rogue One after Disney bought?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Great movie.
Absolutely. I like Solo. I got to
I
tell you,
like
I
Solo too.
thought,
Not many people did, but I liked
yeah,
it.
I
It
did
wasn't
too.
Rogue One for me, but
No.
then again, I still liked it.
Yeah.
I still enjoyed it. I still had a good time.
Who
But so I don't know. We'll see.
who was your showrunner for Preacher? Name him.
Sam Catlin,
Okay.
really brilliant guy, and I think brought the secret sauce to Preacher because it was always going to be gory and hopefully this dark comedy, but Sam really brought a sense of grounding to it, so you really
Okay.
understood the characters and the motivation. And then Sam's taste, all of my New York theater actor friends, know Sam from way back in the day. He was an actor, and
Cool.
his taste in actors and his taste in the moment and how a scene plays is very real and grounded. So the thing on Preacher, that when my friends would call me and say, "Hey, I have this audition for Preacher," I would be like, "Great. So here's the thing. No matter what's happening in the scene, it doesn't matter if you're swinging by someone's guts and playing a harmonica, you have to ground it. You have to play it for realism. You have to actually be playing the scene for realism. That's the only way you get cast on our show."
Cool.
That's Sam's taste. That's Sam's requirement on like what the moment should be and what the show should be.
I see.
Yeah.
Very cool. You'll
Yeah.
forgive my apartment buzz. No, that's amazing. I honestly, and again, I think you've been so fortunate to work with such amazing showrunners
Yeah, I
and
really have.
everything.
Noah
So
Hawley for Fargo. I mean, Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould for Better Call Saul. And I mean, I've
yeah,
worked just worked with some really brilliant, amazing people for sure.
So, and Saul was a good experience that first season and
Oh
everything.
my gosh. So Better Call Saul kind of restored my faith in the business. Like Vince and Peter are two of the most decent, kind human beings on the planet, period. And that kindness trickles down throughout everything. And it's the same crew from Breaking Bad. And everyone is so artistically wonderful at what they do. And they're also so nice and so lovely and so decent. And that's true of the entire cast of Better Call Saul. It's a very welcoming place. It's a very easy place to to dive off the deep end. And look, Betsy Kettleman, I had never played anything like that on screen. I had no idea if it would work, right? Like I was like, this could very easily be a cartoon and this could very easily become a caricature of something. And no one wants to suck on the Breaking Bad spinoff, right?
Hell yeah.
But Vince Gilligan directed our first episode, and when he comes in and says, "Yeah, that's it," you say, "Yes, sir," and you do it. Like you say, "Yeah, I got to trust Vince." But it was terrifying. I mean, that was a dive off a cliff for me. That
Wow.
finding where her pocket was, where she lived in a good way was tricky. And I don't know, on a less warm set, I don't know if that work. I'd like to think I'm brave enough to do that work on any set, but the truth is that a colder set or a cooler set makes it more difficult to do that work, right?
Sure.
So part of the reason the performances are so good in the Breaking Bad world and Better Call Saul world is because everybody is set up in a beautiful way to deliver. Like from the actors to the prop designer to the art designer to the production. I mean, everybody is set up in the best possible way. It really restored my faith. I mean, you move through the business and you start to think, oh, you have to be an asshole to survive, or to, I'm overlooked because I'm nice, and I don't, I really believe in how you conduct yourself is important as a person. And I was like, well, I'll be kind of a workhorse actor, and but I'm not going to change. I'm not going to become an asshole just so I can do something else. But that's not true. Like Better Call Saul restored my faith that good and wildly talented people can find each other and work together and get the job done in a great way.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
honestly, you're on a heart streak, buddy. I don't want to jinx you, because good Lord, I mean, seriously, this is, I really, I am so thrilled every time I see that you're on a show, and I certainly follow you on Twitter. Give people your Twitter handle. Is it just your name?
It's Julianne Emery. I had Instagram and Twitter both at Julianne Emery. And I have a Facebook fan page, but mostly I'm on Instagram and Twitter.
Atta girl. No, and honestly, it really is. It's a pleasure seeing when you. Oh, good. Julie's going to be in that. That'll be fun to watch. So yeah,
thanks.
Absolutely, buddy. No, seriously,
Thank
and I know we're really acquaintances, but it's been, honestly, I'm really glad we had the opportunity to meet each other, and it's been fun watching your career evolve. And truly, you get it, Julie. And truly, this is the kind of interview I was hoping for with creatives when I talk to them, because I think it is informative and it's inspiring. I mean, I'm thrilled for your journey, and only wish you more success. Bosch starts April 16th?
April 17th.
17th, excuse me. Okay.
All the episodes will go up at the same time.
Absolutely.
So while we're all stuck inside, you can get down with that.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for talking. I hope we can do this again in the future.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.